Si je m'épanche sur toi, c'est que je rêve de toi et du soir.
I was planning a different video for this week. As you know, first video of the month is usually sleepwear, lingerie, foundation wear, something like that. Life's been a little crazy and I needed a video I could get done. So one day, edit the next, get it up. So we're going to be doing this one. And if you saw my haul a while back, I'll put a link to it. This was one of the many patterns that I got 3 really great foundation wear patterns. And so we're gonna try the panty because panties are fast. They're super fast and easy. And I had everything. I didn't have to go buy anything for it. I could just zip it up because it doesn't take a lot of fabric. So let me show you the cutting out and then we'll be back to sew. This is the Veronica pattern for underwear. And this is how it looks. It's very well done. This pattern goes up to a 54 hip. And the nice thing about this, if you're like me and you're a little smaller in the front than the back, you can actually cut the front a little smaller than the back and just make sure they match up at the side seam. You can also choose how high your leg is and how high your waist is. This is a fully lined crotch sewn in the traditional way, so you will have no seam touching your, and there will be seam there, but no seam allowance touching the body. I just think this is a well-made pattern. I'm very pleased. The directions, I'm just going to show you, are so well done and well explained, and they're in English and French. And the pattern, it's kind of hard to see. See the little faint line right there? The arrow, direction of greatest stretch, that helps you know which way to lay this out according to the stretch of your fabric. So on my fabric, here's my selvage edge, and the stretch is across grain like this, so that lets me know that the arrow needs to go this way across the fabric, and it doesn't stretch this way at all. It's very stable, that direction, which will be up and down on the body. So this is the stretch, this is not for my fabric. And this is just a cotton knit, like a t-shirt knit, for my testing out of the first time for this pattern. These are my different elastic options, just regular 1/4 inch. I've got a red picot. This has a red flower, so it might be kind of cute to have that little edge peeking out. And I also have some ivory picot, which I could use. So I have options. Not sure which one I'll use yet. Okay, here's my pattern traced off and ready to go. Ready to cut it out. And since this does go up to a size 54, you can see how it's graded. It's easy to measure to see the difference between each measurement. So if you need a larger than 54 hip, because of how well they've done with showing the grading lines, you could easily continue this grading option out. So the hip would come out, it's about 3/8 of an inch, and then you would come up about 1/8 of an inch at the waist, about 1/4 of an inch at the leg, and then about 1/8 of an inch, whoops, about rolled my pattern off, down here at the crotch. And then you can alter up, continue to size to get whatever you need. It's, because they have been so clear on how it's done, it makes it easy for you at home to continue it on. So you could definitely get what size you need. And if you're really tiny and you only need a 28, you can even grade down. So I have 3/4 of a yard here of fabric. Here's my 27 inch, and this is the layout. I bought this for another project, didn't make it up. It's perfect for this. I can easily get 2 pair of underwear, maybe a third, but because I have just a little bit less, once I cut the crotch out, it may mess it up. So I know I could get 2 pair for sure. If I'm doing the full size A, which is the granny panty, but if you're doing a narrow one, you definitely could probably get 3 pair in this larger size like I'm doing. So this is what the layout looks like. This is the stretch, and I just am going to lay this once this is cut out down here like so, and cut out 1 layer of this. There's already a lining cut, and then we will be ready to head to the sewing machine. The very first thing we do is start setting in the crotch. So I'm going to take the back pattern piece and unpin it, and you should have cut out 1 crotch lining and 1 crotch out of your decorative fabric, out of your fashion fabric. So here's my little back, and we're going to flip it over so we can see down here at the bottom, the bottom of the crotch. And we're going to then take our 2 little crotch pieces and we're going to match them up. So we're going to put our right side crotch to the pant like this, and then we're going to sandwich it with the lining. And my lining does have a right and a wrong. It's a little hard to tell, but there is one. And you just want to make sure that you put right side against wrong side. So right side lining to wrong side of panty. I'm double checking to make sure I got it right. And we're making a little sandwich. I love this type of crotch design because you have no unfinished edges. It's much more comfortable against the body. It's just prettier from the inside and the outside. And even if you, like I'm doing a cotton knit, but let's say you were doing this out of a beautiful satiny charmeuse knit, you still would want a cotton lining, and you can have that. So from the outside, it's going to be the beautiful satin. On the inside, you have this nice little cotton lining. So this is the inside, and this is the outside. So here's my little crotch. And then we're just going to put a few pins and serge it. 1/4 inch seam allowance throughout on this, so you don't have any excess to worry about. I'm serging. If you're not serging, set your, and the directions are so good with this pattern. It tells you how to set your zigzag. It's really well done. You can just zigzag this. So I'm going to go ahead and sew this in, and then I'll show you how to do the next step. I just want you to know, if you're going to sew underwear, and like this is the first time I'm making this pattern, but if it works, I will sit down, layer it, use my rotary cutter and cut 5 or 6 pair, and you can make 5 or 6 pair in no time. Like it's just streamlined and easy to do, especially this method. So we're going to do our tester. I hope you are too. I hope you're making your tester with me, and then you'll have your new favorite underwear pattern. And the nice thing is, if you want more than one style, you also want a bikini and a high leg. It's all in there. So easy to sew. All right, I'll be back in a minute with this part stitched. Whether you're sewing at the overlock machine or at the sewing machine, be careful not to stretch this when you're sewing. Just let it feed through evenly. This, if you're using a zigzag or an overlock, it will stretch on its own. If you pull and stretch as you stitch, it actually will stay stretched out, and we don't want that. So here is our little seam. It looks so pretty. Here it is from the inside. Isn't that nice? And now we're going to take our front undies. I'm always dropping pins. I can hear them hit. That's one thing about not having a carpeted floor, is when it hits that floor, you hear it. And you know you can go searching for it with your magnet. So I'm going to open up the little front of our undies. Ta-da! And we're going to match right side of this crotch piece to the right side. So I'm opening this back up. Okay, so here's my lining. I'm going to match the right side to right side. And I'm going to put a pin in it to hold it. And then we're going to do this little roll up thing so that it makes seam completely enclosed. So I'm going to put in a couple pins. So here it is right now, and then we're going to see how we have all this hanging down. We're going to take all of this. This is all going to get rolled up so that we can see the little crotch piece hanging down, the little lining. So we're going to scrunch all that up and make a little sausage out of it so that the crotch lining wraps around that little sausage. And you're going to pin that together and sew it. And you want to make sure it's pushed down so that none of this gets caught in your seam, okay? That's really important. We don't want it caught in our seam. And this is also in their directions. They do it. This is completely explained just like this in the directions. This is very traditional way of doing this type of design, and it is my personal preference. I really like it. So we're going to do this. And now we're ready to stitch it, and when we're done, we just pull this through, it flips around. I'll show you that on camera. And we have an enclosed crotch. Let me stitch it real quick. There it is. And now we just flip it around. And look at that. So from the inside, look at that. This is the inside, so nothing, it's all nice and smooth against our body. And from the outside, and this fabric too, it just really disappears. All right, so now we're ready to just flip this up and do side seams. So we're going to just match front to back and zip down those little side seams on each side. And then it's elastic and we're done. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch up these side seams. And you could, of course, can pin it. If you're pinning at the overlock, make sure you pull those pins out. I always put top panty or the top garment on top when I'm stitching in the bottom on the bottom, and that's just because of the way the stitch is formed on an overlock. I want the top of the stitch to be on the top side because it's one of those finishing things. I like my seams to look really pretty. And because you push the seam, when I put in my elastic, etc., the seam is going to get folded towards the back. This is the wrong side, this is the right side of the seam, so now the right side of the seam is the one that's going to show. That's why I do it that way. So I'm going to flip over and do this one. And I'm sure if you've seen any of my other videos, I've talked about that before. Now, if you're at the sewing machine, you're just doing a little zigzag here, so that it's nice and stretchy. With knits, I know I do not pre-treat them, so this did not get washed and dried first like I do other fabrics, even though it's cotton. And that's because knits roll up into a little sausage, and then they're impossible to cut out. Not really impossible, but not fun. All right, so now we have a pair of underwear, and we're ready for elastic. You can do this, which is 1/4 inch elastic, and I've shown you that technique before. You can do a picot edge elastic like this, and I have 2 different picots. And you can also do a foldover elastic, which I am kind of considering doing. I'll be right back. I'm going to make a quick decision. I'm going to play with them for a second. First of all, let's talk about what size to cut our elastic, because sometimes a pattern will say, if you're a 38-inch hip, cut your elastic at 22 inches, whatever. Which is great if you have a small waist, or if you're within the dimensions of exactly of the pattern. But if you're a 48-inch hip, you could have a 49-inch waist, or you could have a 36-inch waist. Like, everybody's bodies are so different. So you measure your waist, not the pattern, for cutting your elastic. And the pattern actually says this. It says you can wrap it around your body and just see what's comfortable, or you can measure your waist and subtract about 4 inches. And that is a good, usually a pretty good rule of thumb. Now, if you really don't like anything tight, you might only subtract 3 inches, but you don't want it to be the same as your waist. It should always be a little bit smaller, or it's not going to stretch and hold up, which is the point of the elastic. So let me just show you. If you're going to do, let's say I want to do this picot edge. It has this cute little edge on the bottom. You actually put it on the right side of the fabric like this, and you do your quartering, and you zigzag it or serge it on, and this will actually be stretched. So it won't be exactly the same. You'll actually stretch it a wee bit so that when you let go, see, it pulls in. So you'll sew that on the edge, and then it flips over, and you stitch it again. And this is another reason to go smaller, because every time you stitch it stretches. And then you'll have this little tiny picot picking out, which I think is super cute. So that's one option. You do the same method with this, but you put it on the wrong side of the garment instead of the right side to stitch it. So this would go on the inside, zigzag it around, flip it, and zigzag again to make it enclosed. I also have just like an ivory picot edged, which works the same way. Or you can do, this is foldover elastic. And the way the foldover works, you cut it the same, like 4 inches smaller, but instead of sewing it on twice, you actually just wrap the edge of your elastic. Let me get it. I'm going to put a couple pins in it so you can see. And you do the same with your leg. I think you cut the leg 2 inches smaller and the waist 4 inches smaller, something like that. Okay, I'm going to put a few pins in so you can see how this looks. And then you just zigzag this right on. Now, if you want to, you could use your overlock, and you could use the cover stitch, and you could cover stitch on your elastic if you want to. And see, it's stretchy. So you could definitely do a fold over elastic if you want to. So look at all your elastic options. There are plenty. You really want a 1/4 inch to 3/8 of an inch or small, in that range for this. You can often do, and I have, like if you're doing picot edge, you can buy like 1/2 inch picot edge and a 1/4 inch, and use the wider one on the waist and then smaller one on the leg. That's perfectly acceptable as well. So I'm trying to say, do I want to do this, or do I want to do the traditional way? I always like picot edge because I just think it looks kind of cute. It just adds a little decorative. But this is also cute. It's more sporty. This is a sportier look, but it's nice and closing also. So I have to make a decision, and I will show you which elastic I do. I'm really struggling. I do not know what to do. I've not done this one. I might do this just because I haven't. So I think I'll cut my elastic and pin it on and show you, and then we'll have to head to the sewing machine. And I've been sewing this in white up to this point, but I'm not gonna zigzag this in white. I'm gonna zigzag it in red. First thing I did was, after measuring my elastic, I overlapped and I just zigzagged it so it's now a circle. And then I've halved it, so I've got my center back, which is where the little overlap is, and my center front, so that I can then match them to the garment. So I'm going to take my little center back to the center back of the underwear, and I'm just laying it right on top, the seam on top of the pin, and then it just folds right over it, and I'm going to pin it down. And I'm just going to do the same at the center front, and then do the 2 side seams and put lots of pins and quarter it, and I'll be back in a minute. And then I'll show you how I stitch it on. So this is how it's looking. You can see it's cute and stretchy, and I think it looks really cute. It's going to just sort of give it a little outline around the underwear. I do want to mention to you, if you are considering doing this, this is thicker. It leaves a little ridge. So if you want your underwear to not be real noticeable under your garment, if you're wearing this under a slinky little dress or something like that, you're going to see every outline of your underwear. So this is perfect for under jeans or your sweatpants, but I would not be, or something really loose, but don't put this under a slinky little dress. You will see all the outlines. Okay, back to pinning. This is how it looks at the sewing machine. These are my current settings. I think that's going to be fine. I don't want it to be too crazy, too huge of a zigzag. And I'm just going to go ahead and sink my needle. And you can just see how I'm going to just go right to the edge of that. And that makes sure that I'm catching everything. And I will just slightly stretch as I go. This is the time when you do stretch. And just catch this all the way around and sew my circle. So this is how it looks on the other end when it's stitched. So this is the inside, and that's the outside. Let me show you the waist. That's it. Bloop, 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 bloop. Nice and stretchy. As I stitched it, and I mean, I took in quite a bit. I'm kind of wishing I made it even smaller than I did because I like a little bit tighter waist, and I'm small in the waist. So those are things to consider when you're doing it, and I might even take it off and make it even smaller. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with the legs. I'm taking out more on the leg as far as the measurement. So if, let's say, the leg opening measures 20 inches and you might cut 18 as a rule, I think I'm going to go down to 17. I'm going to take out even more, just so that the leg takes in a little bit more. When starting and stopping, like where you put your little seam, I'm going to still make the circle like I did here. This is my center back, which is where I put the seam on this. On the leg, I usually put the seam down here in the crotch. So this is where the little seam would be, and I kind of do a half. So I put an outer at the out seam here, at the side seam, and then my other half inside the crotch, and then quarter from that way. And that way your little overlap is not anywhere that it's going to be seen. You don't, not that anyone's going to see your underwear, but it's important to always have it looking as pretty and as professionally finished as possible. So put that down there where it's not going to be visible. And it also will, because of where it's overlapped, it's not going to show through as much through the outer garment. Though I'm just going to tell you, if you do this, you're going to have little lines all around in your slinky outfit. So let's look at this. Here's the little undies, and you can see I did a tighter leg elastic, and I prefer that. Now it depends on how you like your fit, and I do like a little tighter elastic. So I'm actually going to take the waistband off and tighten it up so that it's similar to the leg. I would also recommend, depending on your fit, like how your body is built, I'm seeing lots of little hairs I need to cut, you can redistribute your elastic. Now often we just quarter it, do side seams front and back and make it evenly distributed between those 4 quarters. But if you are really full in the rear end and you don't need it as tight in the front of the leg, you can actually make the front of the leg a little less tight and put more of the elastic or more of the gather between the distribution in the back. And what that'll do is it'll make the back of the underwear kind of cup under. And that's something I always do in my swimwear on the back end. For me, I prefer a tighter rear end and not quite as tight in the front, and it's more comfortable too, because the front of the leg, it can be pretty uncomfortable if it's really tight at the front of the leg. but not in the rear, and it makes it tuck under the rear end and just stay in place better. So you definitely can redistribute it. I also tend to redistribute it in the back for my waist because I'm much smaller in the back waist than I am in the front waist, and it just tends to fit the body better if I make it a little tighter in the back than I do in the front. Okay, I'm gonna take off this front elastic, make it smaller, and put it back on, and then I'll show you the finished project. Friends, ta-da, here they are. I'll go to a few little beauty shots where it's flat and you can see it, but it turned out really cute. And I will put in down below the information so you can order this pattern from their Etsy shop. I am very, very pleased with the pattern, and I think I have my new favorite classic undie pattern that I will be making a whole lot. Turned out really cute. I think it's adorable with the fold over elastic. I don't know if I would do it all the time, but for this, it was fun to try. I like to try something new, so here we are. And I'll see you next time for another fun video.
Si je m'épanche sur toi, c'est que je rêve de toi, oui, du soir. Au matin, ça fait beaucoup, je le sais bien. Mais quand la brise rapporte ton parfum à ma porte,